Do you remember the cast of Northern Exposure from the 1990s? They made us laugh, tugged at our hearts, and drew us into life in Sicily, Alaska. But 35 years later, their health has seriously declined. From terminal illnesses and tragic accidents to shocking deaths, you won't believe what they've been through. Let's take a look at the real lives of these stars, and you'll be amazed at what they're like today. Rob Morrow as Dr. Joel Fleischman. Rob Morrow was born on September 21, 1962, in New Rochelle, New York. At 28 years old, he played Dr. Joel Fleischman, the brilliant, stubborn New York doctor lost in Alaska, in Northern Exposure, 1990 to 1995. The role made him a star and one of television's most recognizable leading men of the 1990s. Off-screen, though, he faced a very different battle. His marriage to actress Debon Ayer was loving and steady, but they endured long separations as he chased work across the country. He feared becoming the absent father he once criticized, and that guilt surfaced in private arguments and sleepless nights. The pressure intensified as Hollywood repeatedly typecast him as the neurotic Jewish doctor, trapping him in roles that echoed Fleischman too closely. His career choices brought even more turmoil. After Northern Exposure, he rejected major offers to pursue directing, only to face years of unemployment and stalled projects. Financial stress became a quiet shadow over his family, and he struggled with the fear that he had sabotaged his own momentum. As middle age approached, heavy work schedules and constant stress began affecting his health. By his late 50s, he experienced recurring exhaustion and minor cardiovascular issues that forced him to slow down and rethink the pace of his life. Now, Rob Morrow is 63 years old and still working, though at a gentler rhythm. He divides his time between acting, teaching, and occasional directing, focusing on smaller commitments that allow him to stay close to his family. His estimated net worth of $10 million reflects decades of work across television, film, and theater. Barry Corbin as Maurice J. Minifield. Barry Corbin was born on October 16, 1940, in La Mesa, Texas. At 50 years old, he played Maurice J. Minifield, the proud ex-astronaut and domineering businessman, in Northern Exposure, 1990 to 1995. The role transformed him from a working character actor into a household name and one of the show's defining voices. His personal life, however, carried far more strain than his confident on-screen persona. His first marriage to Marie Manning collapsed in 1970 after years of financial instability, long absences, and the pressure of raising 2 children while he struggled for work. The breakup created tension that lasted for decades, haunting family gatherings and leaving him with guilt he rarely spoke about. Even his second marriage to Jo Corbin, though more stable, endured long periods of separation due to filming schedules that kept him away from home for months. The emotional distance left both partners exhausted, and arguments often centered on whether his career was worth the cost. Professionally, he fought another battle. After Northern Exposure, he was increasingly typecast as the grumpy old cowboy, making him feel trapped in roles that exaggerated his age and temperament. He confessed privately that he once considered quitting acting altogether. The pressure only intensified as his body began to fail him. Old injuries from stunt work caused chronic joint pain, and in 2017 he was diagnosed with early-stage Alzheimer's, a blow that shook his confidence. Now, Barry Corbin is 85 years old, still acting but moving slowly and often needing physical support to get through long days on set. He divides his time between small TV roles, voiceover work, and medical appointments. His estimated net worth of $5 million comes from more than 200 roles and the Texas properties he invested in when he was younger. Janine Turner as Maggie O'Connell. Janine Turner was born on December 6, 1962, in Lincoln, Nebraska. At 28 years old, she played Maggie O'Connell, the spunky Alaskan air taxi pilot, in Northern Exposure, 1990 to 1995. The role became her breakthrough, earning critical acclaim and Emmy and Golden Globe nominations. However, her personal life was filled with quiet struggles. She married Jerry Sherwood in 1991, but the marriage ended quickly, leaving her to raise their daughter as a single mother. The pressure of balancing motherhood with a demanding career caused prolonged stress. After Northern exposure, she resisted offers for provocative roles, leading to conflicts with agents and the anxiety of financial uncertainty. All these things contributed to episodes of depression that she managed while maintaining a professional front. In addition to emotional burdens, she suffered physical strain. Years of performing stunts and long hours on location caused back injuries that limited her movement and required ongoing therapy. Despite these challenges, she continued to write, produce, and direct, finding stability through creative control and personal growth, as well as through her yoga practice. Today, Janine Turner is 63 years old, focusing on writing books and practicing yoga. She lives quietly with her daughter on a Texas ranch, reflecting on a career that balanced fame and personal survival. Her net worth is estimated at $4 million, accumulated through acting, producing, and various creative ventures. John Corbett as Chris Stevens. John Corbett was born on May 9, 1961, in West Virginia. At 29 years old, he played Chris Stevens, the witty and thoughtful radio host in Northern Exposure, 1990 to 1995. The role made him a standout presence, blending humor with philosophical depth that anchored many episodes. Yet his personal life carried long-term pressures. Before marriage, he dated Bo Derek for nearly 20 years, and the couple faced scrutiny from media and fans. They finally married in 2020. Balancing fame with a private life was difficult, and early struggles in acting compounded stress, especially managing career choices after his breakout role. Physical strain and emotional tension followed him into middle age. Long shooting schedules, coupled with the demands of romantic and dramatic roles, caused stress-related fatigue and minor injuries. While pursuing acting and later music, he worked intensively, leaving little time for rest, which sometimes aggravated back problems from early days in theater and set work. As of 2025, John Corbett is 64 years old, married, and focused on his music and acting projects. He continues to perform selectively, balancing personal life with creative work. His net worth is estimated at $9.5 million, accumulated through decades of acting, music, and film appearances. John Cullum as Holling Vincoeur. John Cullum was born on March 2, 1930, in Knoxville, Tennessee. At 60 years old, he played Holling Vincoeur, the shy but steady tavern owner, in Northern Exposure, 1990 to 1995. The role turned him from a respected stage veteran into a familiar face for TV audiences. Behind that gentle screen presence was a marriage tested by time and sacrifice. Cullum married dancer and writer Emily Frankel in 1959, and for decades they lived with constant financial uncertainty from theater work, canceled productions, and risky new shows. Long tours kept them apart for months, and arguments often centered on money, exhaustion, and the fear that it could all vanish overnight. As he grew older, his body carried the cost of those hard years. Filming in cold conditions worsened his arthritis and joint pain, and the physical strain of performing on stage into his 70s left him chronically tired. In 2019, he was diagnosed with prostate cancer, forcing surgery and treatment that weakened his voice and stamina. Today, John Cullum is 95 years old and lives quietly in New York City. He appears only occasionally in small projects, mostly readings or brief cameos, as his mobility is limited and he depends on regular medical care. His estimated net worth of around $5 million comes from a lifetime of Broadway royalties, television residuals, and careful living. Peg Phillips as Ruth Ann Miller. Peg Phillips was born on September 20, 1918, in Everett, Washington. At 72 years old, she played Ruth Ann Miller, the dry, sharp-eyed storekeeper, in Northern Exposure, 1990 to 1995. The character started as a minor presence but soon became one of the quiet hearts of the show. However, her real life was far messier than the calm wisdom she played on screen. She went through more than one marriage, each worn down by financial strain, constant moves, and conflicting expectations about work and family. Divorce left her raising children while working long hours as an accountant, and the loneliness of middle age fed a deep sense of failure. When she finally turned to acting in her 60s, she carried all that emotional baggage with her, and every rejection for being too old cut into wounds that had never fully healed. On top of emotional pain, illness followed her for decades. She survived polio and serious abdominal infections, then later faced heart surgery. Her lifelong smoking habit caused chronic lung damage and COPD, so the cold, damp conditions on location in Washington often left her coughing and short of breath between takes, even as she insisted on continuing to work. Finally, Peg Phillips died on November 7, 2002, at the age of 84, from lung disease in a care center near Seattle. At the time of her death, her net worth was estimated at around $1.5 million, built from years of television work layered on top of a long career in accounting. Adam Arkin, as Adam. Adam Arkin was born on August 19, 1956, in Brooklyn, New York. At 34 years old, he played Adam, the volatile, paranoid, barefoot chef, in Northern Exposure, 1990 to 1995. Though recurring, the role earned him an Emmy nomination and made him one of the show's most unforgettable personalities. However, his emotional life was far more fragile than the confidence he projected on screen. His first marriage to Linda Sublette cracked under that weight. Arguments about work, finances, and long absences escalated until their divorce in 1988. Their son felt the strain, and Adam carried the guilt for years. His second long-term marriage also collapsed after growing disagreements about time, priorities, and career ambition. Even his later marriage to Michelle Dunker in 2017, though steadier, was shadowed by his fear of repeating past mistakes. Career pressures only intensified the stress. Transitioning from actor to director brought countless setbacks, projects canceled for budget reasons, studios losing confidence, and years of work vanishing overnight. These disappointments built up until they affected his sleep, mood, and ability to focus. By 2020, chronic stress had weakened his heart, and doctors warned him to slow down after detecting early cardiovascular problems. The diagnosis forced him to cut back on directing schedules that once consumed his life. Today, Adam Arkin is 69 years old, still directing but at a gentler pace, taking on fewer projects and reserving time for rest. He remains active in television, valued for his experience and calm leadership behind the camera. His estimated net worth of $10 million reflects decades of acting, directing, and producing across film and television. Valerie Mahaffey as Eve. Valerie Mahaffey was born on June 16, 1953, in Sioux City, Iowa. At 38 years old, she played Eve, the eccentric, anxious, endlessly imaginative hypochondriac, in Northern Exposure, 1991 to 1993. The role became one of the show's most memorable performances and earned her an Emmy. But behind that bright, unpredictable character was a woman carrying years of quiet pain. Her marriage to director Joseph Kell lasted many years, yet it was marked by long separations, financial pressure, and the emotional strain of raising their daughter largely alone after divorce. Hollywood's coldness toward aging actresses made everything worse. She was repeatedly typecast as the odd villain, and losing major roles pushed her into deep bouts of depression. The struggles followed her into midlife. After the peak of Eve, she fought for work, sometimes waiting months between roles. The financial pressure weighed heavily, and she hid those fears behind her humor. Then came the diagnosis that shattered everything. In 2023, doctors found metastatic breast cancer. Treatments drained her strength, and the disease spread faster than anyone expected. Sadly, Valerie Mahaffey died on May 30th, 2025, at age 71, surrounded by her daughter and close friends. At the time of her passing, her net worth was estimated at $1 million, built from decades of acting despite the many obstacles in her path. Anthony Edwards as Mike Monroe. Anthony Edwards was born on July 19, 1962, in Santa Barbara, California. At 30 years old, he played Mike Monroe, a journalist and community member in Sicily, Alaska, in Northern Exposure, 1992 to 1993. The role added to his growing reputation from film and television. Unlike his character, his personal life has been turbulent. Edwards's first marriage to Jeanine Lobel lasted from 1985 to 2015, producing 1 son and 3 daughters, but alcoholism and work-related stress contributed to the divorce. He remarried in 2017, but ongoing pressures from Hollywood, including past harassment and #Me Too controversies, created persistent anxiety. He also struggled with typecasting after his role as Dr. Mark Green in ER, leaving him with the tension of wanting to expand creatively while managing public expectations. Physically and mentally, he faced challenges as well. Years of demanding TV work contributed to stress-related cardiovascular issues by 2020. The long hours and emotional investment required for roles on ER, Num3S, and other projects exacerbated fatigue and required him to slow his pace. Despite these difficulties, he continued directing and acting, choosing projects carefully to balance health and career. Today, Anthony Edwards is 63 years old, primarily directing while occasionally acting. He maintains a focus on family and selective creative projects. His net worth is approximately $25 million, reflecting decades of acting, directing, and producing. Cynthia Geary as Shelley Marie Tambo. Cynthia Geary was born on March 21, 1965, in Jackson, Mississippi. At 25 years old, she played Shelley Marie Tambo, the lively and compassionate young woman, in Northern Exposure, 1990 to 1995. Her performance earned her 2 Emmy nominations and made her a recognizable face on television. However, her life off-screen was not without difficulty. Growing up in Mississippi, she faced cultural and gender expectations that complicated her career path. She kept her marriage to real estate broker Robert Corin private, and after their divorce in 2018, she focused on raising their 2 daughters. The pressures of early fame, along with private family responsibilities, created constant tension and stress, though she largely shielded the public from drama. When the Hollywood didn't give her any big chance anymore, the transition to Christian-themed films and later streaming projects required adjusting her career focus. Despite these challenges, she maintained professionalism and steadily built a career across television and independent film. Today, Cynthia Geary is 60 years old, living privately and continuing to act in faith-based and streaming projects. Her net worth is approximately $2 million, reflecting years of careful work in television and film, while maintaining focus on family and personal stability. Elaine Miles as Marilyn Whirlwind. Elaine Miles was born on April 7, 1960, in Pendleton, Oregon. At 30 years old, she played Marilyn Whirlwind, the calm and spiritual Native American radio host, in Northern Exposure, 1990 to 1995. Her role highlighted her cultural roots and brought authentic representation to the show. However, her personal life was shaped by early challenges. Growing up as a Native American, she faced discrimination and pressure to succeed while honoring her heritage. Her first marriage as a teenager ended quickly, leaving her a young mother. Balancing motherhood with a rising career created constant stress, but she persevered, embracing her identity and community responsibilities. Health and community struggles followed her. Elaine focused on cultural projects and performance, but diabetes in her community became a central concern she addressed through programs like Resrobics. Years of touring, performing powwow dances, and public speaking took a physical toll, demanding strength and resilience beyond acting. Today, Elaine Miles is 65 years old, still active in cultural work and performance. She lives with her family and continues to teach and inspire younger Native artists. Her net worth is estimated at $500,000, accumulated from television roles, cultural tours, and advocacy projects. Darren E. Burroughs as Ed Chigliak. Darren E. Burroughs was born on September 12, 1966, in Winfield, Kansas. At 24 years old, he played Ed Chigliak, the gentle, aspiring filmmaker and Tlingit adoptee in Northern Exposure, 1990 to 1995. His role brought warmth and curiosity to the small town of Sicily. Yet, he faced personal and cultural challenges off-screen. Being raised away from his father and navigating his mixed Romani heritage created identity struggles. He moved frequently, sought connection with his parents, and had to overcome social pressures to pursue acting. His marriage has been stable, but he managed family and work with care, avoiding public drama. Physical and career stress followed him. He dyed his hair black for the role, adapted to demanding filming schedules, and balanced aspirations to direct films. Community engagement projects, including attempts to revive Northern Exposure episodes, added responsibility and pressure. These challenges tested his endurance and focus throughout his career. In 2025, Darren E. Burroughs is 59 years old, living on a Red Dexter cattle ranch in the Ozark Mountains with his wife. He crafts jewelry, engages in small film projects, and remains active in his community. His net worth is estimated at $1 million, earned from television roles and personal ventures. Terry Polo as Michelle Showalski Capra. Terry Polo was born on June 1, 1969, in Dover, Delaware. At 25 years old, she played Michelle Skowalski Capra, a guest character in Northern Exposure, 1994. The role marked an early television milestone that helped Mo Dung Chokak Duan Lon Hon Trungsung Yipkwako. Although her career was flourish, her personal life was full of trials. She married photographer Anthony Moore in 1997, but the marriage ended in 2004, leaving her to raise their 2 children as a single mother. The responsibility of balancing career and motherhood caused prolonged stress and occasional anxiety, compounded by the pressures of Hollywood and maintaining privacy for her family. Her career demands and physical strain were also challenging. Long hours on set, intense filming schedules, and travel added fatigue, while performing stunts or physically demanding scenes increased risk of injury. Despite these pressures, she continued to secure roles in film and television, including Meet the Parents and The Fosters, building a steady but demanding career path. Now, Terry Polo is 56 years old, focusing on selective acting roles and personal projects. She maintains a private family life and continues creative work while recovering from past stressors. Her net worth is estimated at $800,000, reflecting decades of consistent work in television and film. Paul Provenza as Dr. Philip Capra. Paul Provenza was born on July 31, 1957, in the Bronx, New York City. At 37 years old, he played Dr. Philip Capra, the replacement doctor for Joel Fleischman, in Northern Exposure, 1994 to 1995. The role allowed him to bridge acting and comedy in a high-profile television environment. Off-screen, his personal life remained stable but financially pressured. Transitioning from acting to stand-up comedy and producing documentaries caused periods of uncertain income. Career demands and physical exhaustion were constant. Producing The Aristocrats and touring with comedy projects required long hours and extensive travel. Haphazard scripts and unpredictable schedules on Northern Exposure increased mental strain, pushing Provenza to develop resilience in both creative and logistical aspects of his work. Today, Paul Provenza is 68 years old, still performing comedy and directing documentaries while managing projects from home. He remains active in live theater and touring productions. His net worth is estimated at $3 million, accumulated from decades of acting, stand-up, producing, and directing projects. Diane Delano as Officer Barbara Szymanski. Diane Delano was born on January 29, 1957, in Los Angeles, California. At 34 years old, she played Officer Barbara Szymanski, the tough, recurring law enforcement officer, in Northern Exposure, 1991 to 1995. The role showcased her talent in recurring television appearances and added depth to the small-town cast. Off-screen, her personal life remained largely private and solitary. Diane never married publicly, and she often navigated Hollywood alone. The scarcity of major roles and being typecast in comedic or supporting characters created long-term professional stress and a sense of isolation, even as she maintained a steady career across TV and voice acting. Career pressures and health struggles intersected. Years of performing under tight schedules for television, animation, and guest roles were exhausting, and she often faced the stress of auditioning repeatedly for recurring or minor roles. Later in life, she battled metastatic lung cancer, which progressed rapidly despite treatment, reflecting both her professional dedication and the personal toll of constant work. Sadly, Diane Delano died on December 13, 2024, at the age of 67 in Sherman Oaks, Los Angeles, California. At the time of her death, her net worth was estimated at $2 million, earned from decades of acting and voice work. Graham Greene as Leonard Quinhagak. Graham Greene was born on June 22, 1952, in Ohsweken, Ontario, Canada. At 38 years old, he played Leonard Quinhagak, the shaman whose traditional practices often conflicted with modern medicine, in Northern Exposure, 1990 to 1995. The role highlighted his Oneida heritage and brought depth and authenticity to the series. However, his personal life involved balancing family and career in a challenging industry. He married Hilary Blackmore and raised one daughter while navigating decades of work in film, television, and theater. As a First Nations actor, he faced cultural barriers and typecasting, which created stress and professional tension despite international acclaim. Career demands and health challenges were significant. Greene performed stunts, learned unfamiliar languages for roles, and undertook physically demanding parts in films like Dances with Wolves and Thunderheart. The mental and physical strain of portraying complex characters over decades, combined with the pressures of advocacy and community involvement, tested his resilience and endurance. Sadly, Graham Greene died on September 1, 2025, in Stratford, Ontario, at the age of 73. His net worth at the time of his death was estimated at $4 million, earned through a prolific acting career spanning over 50 years. That's all for today's look at the Northern Exposure cast. Which story shocked you the most? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more updates on your favorite stars.